That looks really good.
Thanks.
Can you animate the background?
You mean like this?
Faster. Faster. Faster! Come on, faster! Perfect. Ship it.
What the fuck? Metaphor ReFantazio. I just like saying it like that. I'm a little Italian. This is a great game with a beautiful interface, but then you hit play and it animates. And that's the issue. That's the only issue. I'm Lucas Olivieri, the creative director at Loreworx, the gaming startup, and redesigning interfaces is kind of what I do in this channel in hopes that a developer might watch this video and make a change or two. This is Metaphor.
Is that a metaphor?
Is that a metaphor?
I don't know.
All right, let's get sweaty. Interface animations. Something that can take a game's UI into masterpiece territory, or just as easily into seizure-inducing, migraine-giving, punch your monitor and break your keyboard and then eat a tub of ice cream as you reflect upon your bad decisions territory.
His ice cream tastes like crap, by the way.
Metaphor ReFantazio is the former, but also the latter. The UI in this game is stunning. It is so creative. I love it when the interface implements the player character and uses camera panning to transition to different screens. But the use of animation in this game should come with a seizure warning half the time. With this being a JRPG with a mix of turn-based combat and real-time combat, I'd like to imagine the game as a living organism with a heart rate. When the character is killing things in real time, or executing moves in turn-based combat, or transitioning from exploration to combat, the heart rate shoots straight up. When you're thinking about your next move, or browsing a vendor's item list, or looking at a map, or staring at the game menu, that's when the game needs to breathe. That's when the heart rate needs to go down. Metaphor does a fantastic job using UI animations and transitions to enhance moments where the gameplay calls for adrenaline, but it also uses hectic, distracting animations and screens where you want to breathe, focus, or just take a goddamn break. And to exemplify this, let's run a little experiment. Here's a typical button for a game menu. Settings. Option A is just the white settings text on a red-pink paintbrush background. Option B rapidly cycles the brush background. And Option C adds a white bar between the text and the animated background, and it changes the text to black. I want you to try to resist the bias of picking the coolest looking option here as best you can. My question is, which of these options provides the best, most comfortable reading experience? And keep in mind that you'll be dealing with this UX situation hundreds, if not thousands of times in what is a 60 to 100 hour game. With option A, the only issue is a very small lack of contrast. This tone of red isn't perfect for either black text or white text. If it was up to me, it would be darker. But this is just a tiny nitpick. Option B may look cool, but it might also give you a headache. You see, when you animate something on the game screen, you grab a player's attention. In the case of a list menu, your attention should be on the button's text. But because the game is animating the background around the text, your eyes spend a split second looking at the animation area before focusing on the text inside of it. And after that split second, you still have to dedicate more brain power reading the text because readability is taking a hit when you change the background rapidly like this. This design is used on several of the game's screens, and as someone who has migraines, I suffered for it. But what's really interesting is option C. I think the designers knew they had a readability problem with that second option. So they added a white bar to make the text more readable. And they didn't animate it. This third option provides a much more comfortable reading experience. What drives me crazy though is how inconsistently they used it. Picking dialogue options, perfect execution. Though I'm going to talk about this dialogue box later. Trust me. Vendor screen, item description gets it, but the item name does not. And here's a neat example, leveling. The numbers all get a black stroke. More evidence that the designers knew they had a UX issue. All of these screens are breather screens. They provide a break from the action. Players expect the game to pause when they open the menu. But these high-speed UI animations never let that happen. There's always something going on at all times. It reminds me of that Jason Statham movie where he had to keep his heart rate up at all times or he'd die.
My name is Chev Chelios, and today's the day that I die.
There are ways to use animation in these menus while also letting the player rest in these screens. Personally, I would just have the background change when switching from one item to another. That gives you the illusion of animation without the readability issues. Atlus has a history of animating their menus. In Persona 5, they also animate highlighted buttons. But there's one giant difference. The background directly behind the text remains solid at all times. And while I would personally prefer a more subtle approach, this is very readable. This video was a suggestion from a couple of our viewers. Thank you for the video idea. If you'd like me to take a look at a game, drop a comment and let me know. I like JRPGs because they have this thing where it's like a mixture of anime and manga at the same time, where they go crazy in the UI, and I love it, I really do. I just think that they need to rein things in a little bit. And so if you look at this HUD here, I have voiced my disdain, my hatred of something called vignetting, right? And vignetting is when you darken the corners of the screen with a black gradient. Now, they are not doing this here in the adventuring camera because this game has an adventuring camera and also like a turn-based combat camera where they do use vignetting. Specific situation there. They don't do vignetting here, but what they do is what I think is a worse kind of vignetting. They put a freaking shape on the bottom left side of the screen, corner of the screen. It is the same thing as doing a vignette, but you're actually covering it with this green turquoise looking crescent, and I don't like that. I typically don't like it when you cover the game screen with a shape that adds absolutely nothing to my experience. You can see this clearly in like building games. It's very, very typical in city building UIs where they like to take the bottom of the screen and they cover the bottom of the screen with a bar. And in this bar, even though they make it like as thin as possible, this bar takes up the entire bottom of the screen, and then they just put like the building icons in there. But 80% of the bar is just the shape with nothing in it. Obviously, it's not to the same extent here, but it's kind of like the same thinking. So I removed the green shape and lowered the minimap. I also removed the big area name because you don't need that on your screen the entire freaking time. You can open your map and look at it there if you forget where you are. I would have the area name appear when you enter the area, then fade away. Quick problem that you can see with the map here. This is a compression problem. This is the default level when you open the map. It looks awesome, looks amazing, and these are the little elements that you see, right? So you see this northern border fort, you see the camps, you see all of these things, they look great. However, when I zoom out, you're gonna see what happens to the quality of these things right there. So they lose so much quality. It almost looks like it's a pixel art game now because it's a problem with the compression. You see that, Fernando? Like, you can barely tell that this thing is a fire now. Look at this one right here, like this city. You can barely see what's happening here. If you go back, now you can see what it is. But when you zoom out, it's super pixelated. If I take this little fireplace thing and I put it in Photoshop, I open Photoshop and then I make it super small, it's going to look 1,000 times better than it does in the map, in the world map, because of the compression. The compression is not working correctly. And this is something very small that I noticed that nobody else is gonna notice. An RPG is a great game for you to see this in, because RPGs, they use icons for skills, right? Your characters have different skills, they use little icons. When we design these icons, they are designed in a much higher resolution than what is shown in your game. So that little icon that's in your little hotbar, that is maybe like 5 or 10% the actual size of the icon that gets designed in like Photoshop or something, right? So the game engine needs to compress it to make it look super small like that. And when you next play an RPG and you look at those icons and maybe you notice an icon, a skill icon that looks a little pixelated, It's like, oh, these black lines, they look a little pixelated. They don't look very smooth. You know that it was a compression problem. And it's the same thing that's happening here. Nerd talk, there you go. I think this works really well when you have dialogue in this game because this is an anime type game. It's based off of it's like manga, right? So you have this talking head on the bottom of the screen. That works because of the genre, because of the style it works. I don't think it would work in like Baldur's Gate or something. Can you imagine this big head? Here's where I don't think it works. A lot of times in the game, you have a wide shot that's actually pretty close to the face of the character that is speaking. And you end up with a situation where you have a face on the bottom left corner of the screen because it's what they do. But then you also have the character model's face looking at the camera, looking at whoever he's talking to or she's talking to. And they're both animated at the same time. And you have both heads are talking at the same time. And it's just strange. Remove the face in cases like this, or actually do, the camera work where you are changing angles. Right?
Just leave it there, man. Whatever. Who's gonna care? Just that dude from the Loreworx YouTube channel.
Well, yes, exactly. Oh, I love this screen. I love it. I just love it. I freaking love it. Look, I'm a little biased, but I love the archetype tree.
No, man.
Oh, sorry. Demonetized. The archetype tree based off of Leonardo da Vinci.
It's crazy to think about that a turtle did that.
Oh, how beautiful is this screen, man. I would only just add some color. That's all.
I love that
to the icons.
There is some skills on the dude's nuts.
I was gonna say, I knew you were gonna say that. The shape that it makes is very anatomical as well.
Those are 100% the stronger skills.
Please excuse Fernando for calling these skills. They're archetypes or classes. Like I said, I want to add a bit of color here. This screen is actually pretty colorful, because each class you unlock has its own color. But if you master a class, the hexagon changes to this gold version. So you grind archetype levels and get rewarded with a worse looking archetype screen. And I get why they changed the hexagons to gold, and I want to keep that. But I prefer if the classes didn't lose their original colors. So I added a small inner glow to the gold hexagons. It's a small change, but I think it makes things a little more interesting to look at. If you enjoy this kind of nerdy game design video, drop a like and subscribe. You'll be helping us make our own game a reality, and we'll be forever grateful. I am melting. Today is just particularly hot. I accept sponsorships from air conditioner companies. Samsung, the only one that I know. Frost-free is not a That's just like a refrigerator thing, man. I am a person that suffers with migraines. I have to deal with migraines a lot. And it's the first game that actually gave me a migraine. And it's because of this animation here. This background, this box that is animated. Persona 5 also has a dialogue box that gets animated, okay? But the animation in Persona 5 is uniform. This one is literally 4 or 5 different brushstroke frames, kind of like that other one that we talked about with the menus and stuff like that. And it's cycling like crazy. When you're designing stuff like this, you have to think, where do I want my player's attention, his eyes, to be at? And it's right there, the dialogue itself, especially if I use the freaking Japanese audio in the game. I need to read the subtitles, right? I need to look at the stuff. If around it, you're giving me this crazy animation that is cycling with different brush strokes, it's like you're reading the book, but then your stupid cousin is playing Jedi in front of you, going like zoom, zoom, zoom. It's like, bro, I'm trying to read a book here, but your cousin is right here.
And the thing that bothers me the most is when the dialogue is animating itself non-stop. This circle thing, I always look at it and think, oh, something's loading.
Yeah, because whenever you have animation on the interface, it draws your attention. Like it calls your attention because, oh my God, something is animating. It's like you automatically look at it. Like, I think this UI is so beautiful, but it just doesn't need this animation here. It looks amazing right there. Paused. If you play the game and the dialogue box is bothering you like it bothers me, try turning off the line animation so the dialogue lines appear instantaneously. That made it more bearable. And on that note, I want to quickly touch on voice acting. Metaphor is a $70 game, and it's mostly voiced. And the voice acting is pretty good. But the lines that are voiced and the ones that aren't feel totally random. There's no difference in presentation, and the game isn't even coded to differentiate them. I like to play with dialogue auto skip on, because conversations flow more naturally. But I frequently get an unvoiced piece of dialogue in the middle of a conversation, and because the game doesn't treat the line any differently, I don't have time to read it before it gets skipped. Because it takes a second or two for me to go, oh, crap, unvoiced line, gotta read. Then it skips before I'm done.
What?
For $70, this game should be completely voiced. But at least turn off auto skip automatically for unvoiced lines. Like, let me have an auto skip setting for voiced and unvoiced lines. Look at the tutorial interface. That looks awesome. But there's a very noticeable thing that is not present in this thing that's written on screen. The background is not animated, and I can read it without getting a headache. I am on a crusade because I want developers to stop giving us monsters that look the same. I've talked about this in other videos. It is extremely easy to have bigger monster variation in your games without actually creating new monsters. This game has a problem with enemy variety. All right, you fight, sometimes it's the same fight with like 4 monsters, they look the same. Just create skins. Change the skin colors. You can create like 4 different skin textures per monster. So that's a 4K skin texture is like 11 megabytes. With 1 gig, you could have 90 different skin textures in your game. It's not a mobile game, so you're not worried about storage. And even if you are worried about storage, I've talked about this before, you can have the game in code, add a color overlay that's randomly picked, and then randomly select the color of these monsters. They will look like the same mesh, but they will look like a different shade of a different type of color, and you end up with many monsters that look a little different. And you can do the same thing with the mesh scaling. So you can have monsters that are the same, but some are a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller. It's so easy to implement this stuff, and is it going to solve the issue of enemy variety? No, it's not. But it's going to make it a lot less noticeable. And I'm on a crusade to make this happen in RPGs, because it's a problem with 90% of RPGs out there. They do something really cool. They hide the loading screens very well because they load a new zone or a new section using the interface animations. So they do a transition with the interface. See, this is a transition into the battle, and you kind of don't notice that it's like loading. God, I hate this stuff. This stuff is just, PC gamers usually hate motion blur, chromatic aberration, vignetting, all of these stupid visual effects, and that's because PC gamers are glued to their screens, and so it's very noticeable. I love this mouse cursor in this game. It's my ideal. I have to listen. If I'm gonna talk about the little things, Fernando, that I don't like, I'm gonna talk about the little things that I like. You can never go wrong with white and black, okay? White mouse cursor, nice and big with a nice black border. Cannot go wrong.
There is another way not to go wrong with mouse cursors. Using a goddamn controller.
I don't like controllers, sorry.
You're wrong.
Let's talk about something that drives me nuts. When it's something super simple, it has been done before for 50 years, yet developers try to reinvent the wheel. This game has incredible anime scenes. This is the intro of the game. It's this incredible anime scene. What they do with the subtitles, I have never seen before in my life. We have been doing subtitles as a species, not just like in gaming. In movies and stuff, we've been doing subtitles for a century now. And yet, what they do, I have never seen before. They literally use a gradient effect and they make the entire bottom of the screen dark to show the subtitle. Why? It's like a reverse Philips Ambilight thing. You know, it's that thing on YouTube where you hover over the video with your mouse cursor and it makes the bottom of the video all dark? It's ridiculous. It's annoying. Especially because as soon as the subtitle is out of the screen, it brightens the screen. Look at it. I can't explain it. Because you get this, oh, now it's bright, now it's dark, now it's bright, now it's dark, now it's bright. See that? Especially now with more of a lighter background. Oh my God. Take the lettering and add a black border and you're done. And the other thing too is they have subtitles like this in other sections of other parts of the game where they don't do the gradient. And instead they actually do a black box. And I don't get it. It's these inconsistencies. It's almost like you went, you know what, that was a crazy idea, adding a gradient to the subtitle. Let's do something different this time. Like, boom. Why? Why is this one different? Now they're using a rectangle, and it's not the rectangles that you're used to seeing in streaming, it's an actual black rectangle. Why? I don't understand. You have this masterpiece of UI design and style, and then these little things that are gonna bother the 0.1% of your player base that notices these things. And I just don't get it. I just don't understand. What's really interesting is that most of the issues I have with this game have to do with dialogue. It's the subtitles, or the way the dialogue is animated and presented, if it's suddenly unvoiced, or has an animated background. Maybe it's because Fernando and I have always been involved in show business and dialogue is really important to us. But I can't not talk about the way Metaphor presents ambient dialogue. Most RPGs are really discreet with these lines. They're meant to add to the lore of the game. They're not very important. But Metaphor gives them a lot of importance. They pop up like ads on a website, like big animated black boxes taking up a bunch of real estate on your screen. Sometimes you get more than one at the same time. Other times you get ambient dialogue and follower dialogue. It's a mess. And yeah, Atlas does this in Persona 5 too. The Metaphor version is just more obnoxious. What puzzles me though is that they use a different presentation in other situations that is, in my opinion, 1,000 times better. Here you can see the NPC who said the line. And if you move the camera, the talk bubble is anchored to the NPC and it doesn't look like a website banner ad I use ad blockers for. So they have a better alternative. They just don't use it a lot. Look, being super nitpicky and diving deep into the pixels and design decisions is what I do in this channel. And I know this video may come off as negative, but I want to be clear, I think the game is great. And I'm enjoying playing it after taking my migraine pills. It's so cool, it's so creative. If you enjoy this nerdy interface talk, then subscribe to the channel because we got more videos coming about this stuff where we nerd out, and when you subscribe, you help us indirectly make our own game a reality, and Fernando will be super grateful. Need to.
Yeah, subscribe.
All negative comments for Fernando, not me.
Who deserves it more? The guy who talks about a Japanese game in an Italian accent, or me that just want the game?
The name of the game is ReFantazio. I mean,
No, stop it, stop that.
this is ReFantazio.
Okay, bye.